Hey everyone, I'm Rabbi Tzvi Waxman.
And I'm Rabbi Shalom Rodin.
We're here at the Hanging at the Hub podcast, which we created to be a place where it's real talk, people and rabbis, where we discuss all kinds of everyday topics and find the Jewish perspective on it.
Everyone has a story, whether you're famous or not, and we're trying to bring that out to everyone.
So with all our interviewees, hopefully you can learn something, we can learn something, and should be fun.
All the best.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Hanging at the Hub, real talk, people, and rabbis, where we just have a good time, talk with real, great people, and sometimes find a Jewish perspective on it that would hopefully improve our perspective in our lives in a positive way. So we're here with a special guest, the world famous Liat Sacks
Kachlon.
Okay, edit that.
Kachlon.
You want the problem is
The truth is I didn't change my last name. That's the truth.
Okay, first of all, it says Liat Sacks on your video. That's what
No, the truth is I didn't change my last name because Eliran didn't go to school for me. I'm a Sacks.
Oh, so is that what? Should I say Liat Sacks?
What? I need 5 years success before I go through changing my paperwork. That's
Good.
the
So
truth.
I'm saying Liat Sacks then.
Yeah.
The famous Liat Sacks. We'll go into that a little later. Welcome, Liat.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, guys. This is exciting. I'm sorry I'm your only guest on Zoom, but I'm also petrified of germs, even pre-COVID. So this is just like extra.
I feel like you like to break barriers anyways. You like to be the first of new things.
No, you know what? I think I started Zoom before Zoom was cool. My entire business was made around like my health issues. And so now everyone's just using Zoom.
Yeah, we'd love to. Yeah, we're gonna jump into that. So,
But like what you said, breaking barriers, for anyone who doesn't know Liat, for those that do know Liat, someone who's not shy, you share your opinion without any reservations. So I guess I'll start out asking, where did that come from? Is that, being a child of South Africans, parents who are also very outgoing, at least your father is the one who's not shy. Is that something you growing up, you got from him? Is something you grew into? Nurture nature?
Everything that, things that I noticed about my dad, even things that annoyed me, I am that. From a young age, he would make us go to Cafe Fino, the kosher restaurant, and be like, "Hi, this is Liat. She'd love to babysit your kids." And I'm like, he's like, and just leave me talking there, which I hated so much, but I feel like I see myself doing the same thing, kind of talking to someone that automatically they don't even know they're on three-way with someone else, and I'm just connecting them. So I think definitely part is from my dad, just a natural connector, talking a lot. Apparently, since I was a young kid, I always was kind of just out there talking a lot. And it definitely has to come from my dad, because hopefully not to his extreme, but to some level.
Look, it obviously got you far. It's being so young and yet so successful. It definitely gave you a head start in life. So for sure.
I think actually that changed it. So you said some nature, but definitely some nurture. I think when you say that, a lot of my life events, which I'm sure we'll get into, which have brought me to where I am, have really changed my outlook on a lot of things in life, where it was just kind of let go in terms of I'm going to say what I want to say. Life is short, just kind of really put things into perspective in terms of do what I want, obviously within reason, but just this idea of not holding back and just going after what you want, because I guess when life throws certain things at you, you just you realize, okay, it's either this or nothing. So I'm going to go for it. So I think that's kind of what's happened along the way.
Now, let me ask you this. I wasn't planning this, but some people with South African accents, I don't have a hard time, but some people have a hard time understanding it. When you were growing up, was it just because it's your parents, you understood them, or you had a struggle with that, or your friends?
No, I could switch anytime I want to. So if I want to switch and be South African mid-thing, it's not a problem for me. So no, I definitely understood them. And my mom, I think you're probably talking more about my dad, because my mom is very clear.
Yeah.
Like her mother was deaf. And so like she literally enunciates everything at like volume 37. So my dad, and sometimes I'm like, what? But I think it's more that he like he's speaking so fast and like with the accent, it's like lost.
My favorite part is that your father is going to listen to this, and we're just talking about it.
No,
That's my favorite
but I
part
tell you the
about
real
it.
hard part, and this might be good for him to when you're on the phone with him, or really a lot of South Africans. Again, I think people love the South African accent, so it's really no.
I think sometimes they get stuck listening to the accent. They're not listening to what's being said. They're like,
I sound so good.
But now it's just hard to understand. Like, but you don't want to ask them to repeat what you said. Like, it just because whatever. So.
And also, did you have a lot of rusks?
Yeah, my mom used to make them for a little. Yeah.
I like how I threw that out there. Rusks.
My mom made them for a little. My mom would make them for a little. I mean, I wasn't always obsessed. The ones my mom made were good with buttermilk, but like if you actually have a real rusk, it's essentially like a mandel loaf on Pesach that's like rock hard and like no flavor.
When I came to your house once and your father was like, "You got to try this," he's like, "But you probably want coffee with it or to dip it." So already when you're starting off, you have to dip it in order to eat it. Get ready.
It's a creepy side. Yeah, it's like you need to put a lot of ketchup. Like when someone says that about food, you're like, eek. I agree.
All right, so let's jump into it. So you grew up in Dallas, right?
Yes.
You were born and raised here?
I was born in Dallas, Texas, yes. In the same house that my parents still live in. I mean, I wasn't born in the house, but you follow. Medical City.
Mm-hmm. Let's go right into I don't know how old you were when, for those of you who don't know your father, Ivan, when he first found out that he was diagnosed with lymphoma, correct?
Yes. So the first time he was diagnosed with lymphoma, we have so many health things in the family that sometimes it all gets blurred together. But the first time I believe was when I was 15, like a freshman in high school. And I mean, that was a shock because we're used to him always being, which he still is, thank God, the strong leader of not only our family, but so many different areas, like in the community, kind of just within everything. And so we found out he had lymphoma, which my parents at the time told me they're like, "Oh yeah, dad has this thing. It's called lymphoma. It's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Isn't that cancer?" They're like, "No, it's lymphoma." I'm like, "Are you sure?" They're like, "No, it's just called lymphoma." I'm assuming there was Google then. And I figured it out, but it was just like, oh yeah, no, it's, so that was definitely a challenge. His first time having cancer, which then, a couple of years later, I think 5 years later, he got it again when I was 20. He came back again. And then the third time it came back was 2.5 years later when I was like 22 or 23. And thank God now he's been in remission. But that was definitely a challenge for the family time after time, especially because, my sister and I both weren't living in Dallas anymore. And actually the final time or the last time that he had it, I actually decided to move home to be here just because I was always kind of the caretaker in the family in general. Not that my mom's not. She, of course, was as his wife. But I decided to move back to be here with him during that time.
Hanging at the Hub will be right back. But first, here's another edition of Why Do We Do That?
There's a commandment in the Torah to give charity. It's based on the verse in Deuteronomy, "If there's a poor person among you, you shall open up your hand to him." Giving charity is equal to all other mitzvos. Some other fun facts: one should give with a smile. Persuading others to give as well is even a greater mitzvah. We're taught in Mishlei, charity saves from death. Giving tzedakah, charity, one can save your life. Thus, the reward is life. By giving charity, one demonstrates that he understands that the purpose of life is to help other people. As the Torah tells us, the world is built on kindness. The Talmud tells us that one should give 1/10 of his income to charity. And when you do that, there's a special blessing of wealth. And finally, of all the commandments that we're given, the only commandment where God says, test me, is the commandment of giving charity. When you give charity, God says, I'm going to double and maybe even more. But God says, test me. Have a good day. You know, again, at the same time, it seems like, I guess there was a 5-year, different times he was diagnosed, but there's a certain time you had a health issue that you're open about, which again, I think is so inspiring for all of us. You know, when someone goes through something challenging, right? There are two types of people. Some people hide it and they keep it, to themselves, which again, we don't judge that.
Is it
That's
me?
obviously
Yeah.
everyone. And then there's other people who are very open about it, and they're very, they share their story, either for their own, personal reason, for their own health. They feel like they just want to get it out, or just to,
Definitely.
not to be, nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be shy about. And I know, I want to get into that also. I'm curious how you're balancing all, your health issue, I don't know what the right way to say, health challenge.
Yeah.
With your father having cancer and having a brother who, is autistic. If you could just share about that, like what was that like?
So,
what was that?
Yeah, definitely. So all these different parts of my life, it's crazy. Like they say that you could, God's doing this for a reason. God's doing this for a reason. And, a lot of people have difficulty understanding that. And I definitely have at times. But if I stand where I am now, I could literally see that each single thing that I went through, which I'll explain in a minute, all led up to where I am. So when my dad had cancer for the second time, yes, I was 21 I might be mixing up my ages, but basically I found that he had cancer. The next morning I was in college at University of Maryland, and I woke up and my hands were so swollen, and the blanket laying on me felt like it weighed 1,000,000 pounds. And I had my hair in a ponytail like this, and it felt like it was like bricks sitting on my shoulder. And it was literally the next morning from when I found out my dad had the lymphoma again. And I couldn't get out of my room. Like I couldn't open the door. My hands were so swollen. And I'm like, what is going on? And fast forward a little bit, I was diagnosed with lupus, which I had no idea what that was when I was told I was diagnosed with lupus. But basically it's an autoimmune condition where your immune system attacks itself. And so I truly believe that whether it was laying dormant in my body or not, I believe this stressful event triggered it. It was almost like it was like clockwork. Like one day I was running, I was a black belt, did Muay Thai for years. I was in cross country. I was, I would say a picture of good health. And it was one day done. Haha, Liat, your life's changing. And from that day, that was a huge change for me, of this diagnosis of lupus, which is it took a little longer than one day to diagnose, because it essentially affects your entire immune system, and your entire immune system makes so many different parts of your body work that it imitates so many other issues. But I found out relatively quickly. And so from then, that was my junior year of college. I spent the next 2 years, my junior year.
Yeah. When you found out, when you were diagnosed with lupus, is it, besides the physical pain and the symptoms that could be,
don't Google it. I wouldn't recommend
it's
Googling
horrible.
it.
It's painful. Emotionally also, was it very,
oh yeah.
Did you start feeling like,
I was
depressed.
Me? I was so depressed. Because when you get something new told to you, what do? You go look it up, right?
Right.
What do? You go join a support group, maybe. like you're in these support groups where people are identifying themselves as the disease. Then they like list their medications too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this like what my life is going to be? You know, like essentially like they're signing off like it's like their masters or their doctorate and these like essentially it's becoming their label. And it's just like you look at it and you're like, oh my God, is that what, like right now it's just started off as lupus apparently, but am I going to get all these labels too? And so it's definitely a mind, like a wild mind game, because you're starting to think about your future. I mean, you think through everything that you wouldn't even think about. You're like, am I going to be able to meet someone? Am I going to be too sick? Am I going to be in a wheelchair? Am I going to be able to have kids? Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to continue to feed myself? Can I work? Are my parents going to have to support me? Like questions that like you're, you know, when everyone else is at 22 years old, typically you're thinking about like, well, what am I going to do to take over the world? You know, mine was like everything became a thought out decision. And I was the most impulsive person ever. Like, oh, I want to go see a friend. I'll get on a plane now. Oh, I want to do this. Okay. And suddenly I had to put thought into everything I did, because with lupus, you're given this limited amount of energy a day. And there's this analogy called the spoons analogy. And basically someone was trying to explain it to a friend in a cafeteria and was saying, they're like, well, what's it like to have like a, you know, a chronic illness? And they're like, it's basically like having spoons. And they picked up a pile of spoons in a cafeteria and they said, right, so typically you as a normal person have unlimited spoons. Like, okay, I got to pick the kids up from school today. Okay, that's one spoon. All right, I got to take the dishes out of the dishwasher and put them away. Okay, that's another spoon. Oh, I got to call my grandma, whatever it is. And these are all spoons that people typically use unlimited or have a lot more. With lupus, it's like, okay, you're given 3 spoons a day, sometimes 1 spoon a day. Sometimes you have no spoons. It's like, what are you going to choose to do with it? And it came to this, you know, making these decisions that someone at 20 something who's in like their peak energy level usually is not thinking about. Like, oh, I probably shouldn't go get dinner with my friends tonight because I won't be able to get up for my class at 10 a.m. tomorrow. But that's like a huge time difference in it. So it just starts making you think about these things, everything. Oh, if I go outside, do I have sunscreen? Because I get really sick if I'm in the sun. If I don't have this, do I have enough of this? Or like packing for a trip, like bringing every medication ever. Like I am so envious of people who could just be like, all right, yeah, I'll crash at your place tonight. Like I could never think of doing that. Like I have to have every medication in case anything's needed, you know, my medical history for everything. And it's just like, this all changed in a minute. And it's those kind of things that we don't realize how much we take for granted, literally, of being able to be like, yeah, I'll just crash on your couch tonight. Like if I did that, my body, I wouldn't be able to walk the next day. And so just kind of, and I mean, another huge thing was, you know, so the medications they put you on for an overactive immune system are immunosuppressant so that it doesn't work. And so when you're on immunosuppressant drugs, you don't have an immune system. So like whether it's catching a cold that's out there. I mean, think of Corona right now, but I mean, even for a common cold. So this is like, I'm literally hibernating. But I mean, even a paper cut, like you think how your immune system helps a paper cut heal on your hand, or, you know, it's just so many things that your immune system does that just that you never had to think about before.
I take for granted, for sure.
Oh, wow.
No, it's an amazing thing. Like I guess I feel like everyone has autoimmune. There's autoimmune disease, or
everyone does have some. If you're open about it, everyone will tell you they have some.
And I have my personal story, which I'm not gonna get to now. I have Crohn's, and I remember when I was diagnosed, also in my early 20s, and it was devastating. Besides the pain and the other crippling effects, it's just like you're saying, emotionally, you know. We so define ourselves and by our physical state and how we look and how we think we want to be and we're gonna be.
Totally.
And then I lost a lot of weight, and I used to get very self-conscious. And it's literally, it's like, oh, my life just changed, overnight with this diagnosis. I'm curious, how did you move forward from that? Again, hearing the fact that your father had cancer, you were, your younger brother who was autistic, and now you have your own health issue challenge of lupus. What was that like? Okay, I got to move forward, or I'm just gonna sink.
So
If you had
it's
that,
definitely, yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely, it's easier to say now. I think at the time, it's like when you're going through something, you're kind of just going through the motions. I mean, I could make up something like I just knew, I mean, at the time, but you go through it. I mean, so it's like, okay, what things do I have to focus on right now? I still have assignments due. I'm still in school. So I need to make sure these teachers are getting me my assignments from the hospital bed. What is this? Okay, I want to make sure my dad's doing fine. Or like, I didn't even realize the extent to how it affected me. Because at that point, they say it's usually the worst in the beginning. At that point, I just had lupus. Now I have like 4 other autoimmune conditions that go with it. I think like once you have one, it's your entire immune system. So like, assuming like my stomach got involved, they probably say it's Crohn's and then this, but like they just like lupus covers it all. But they do have like individual names for the different parts it affects. But there was definitely times I was depressed. Like very depressed. Because you're just like in the hospital over and over. Just like, okay, I'm out and now I'm in. Ugh, now I'm out, now I'm in, all the time. And just also retelling your story that doesn't even make sense to you at first. Like you're going into a doctor and you're retelling the story. And when I try to tell you it now, I barely remember it because there's been so much along the way. So they're like, okay, so what morning was it that you woke up? What was your first symptom? I'm like, to be honest, I don't know. Oh, then I'm saying this. And I'm like, oh, but actually I remember this happened back then and this. And you're retelling a story and trying to essentially you really need a PowerPoint of like, okay, so on this date, this happened. On this date, this happened. There was a trauma here. This, and a huge difficulty for me was one of my biggest fears in the world has always been needles. Like I am petrified of needles. Mm-hmm. And then getting a condition where you are basically you are just getting poked nonstop with IVs and they can't find a vein and this and that. And talk about exposure therapy. I was just like getting poked and prodded. And like even little things like that, I had to do therapy for because I was like weirdly freaked out by needles. Like wouldn't walk barefoot on a beach, but think that like needles were going to be on the beach or there was, like just like things that weren't even rational from like one haunted story I heard as a kid that like someone put in a movie theater seat or something. And then
I think I heard that story.
That story, that like famous story, like with HIV.
Yes.
And so it was just like at the time I just had to get through. That was it. And definitely things had to change. Like I was in a 5-year master's program to get my master's in special ed. And
okay, so you were 20. Then you were diagnosed when you were 20, right?
22, I think.
22. So you're in college at this point.
Uh-huh.
So how did you balance that and schooling? I
have no idea. Like, first of all, I had great friends in my program. Like my best friend Jenny was like, she told me the other day, she's like, Liat, you remember when you had to take that English literature class and I wrote your paper? I'm like, you did? You're such a good friend. Because it was like, I got last to sign up, like a class I would never sign up for.
Was there anything that kept you positive, or you just survival? You have a goal. I want to graduate and I'm just going to do it. Or you
no, I've always been, like my humor is pretty, I could laugh at a lot of things. Like, yeah, like I don't know if it's dark or, but I'm able to like laugh at a lot of things. And so it was never, and I had really good friends. My family was amazing. My parents my mom was literally caretaking between my dad and then like coming to fly up to be with me in the hospital. And like I wasn't me independently. I had amazing support. I was home for Rosh Hashanah in 2016 and I started feeling sick. So I had to go to the hospital and like having stomach issues. And when I went, first they're sending me back, then I went back in again. They're like, oh, it's her gallbladder. She needs to have it taken out. Like, okay, you listen to the doctor if they say that. Get my gallbladder out, fine. Great. After I had the surgery, I started having really bad pain in my hands at certain hours. Like in the evening, my hands would hurt really bad. Like someone was squeezing like a tight rope around it or something. And I didn't know what was going on. So I would just like, they'd give me something for pain. Then they'd give me something for like itching because my hands would get really, really, really itchy from like the moment I came out of surgery. So I'd like scratch them on anything that I could. And I didn't know, but this was part of the process of 3 of my fingertips freezing off. So with the surgery they did, the doctors didn't read the papers fully, and 3 of them, and so my hands weren't covered during the operation. And even though the paperwork stated that I have Raynaud's, which is like very poor circulation, my hands weren't covered. So they basically froze off in the operating room. But they don't freeze that second. It's progressively over time. So I watched them decompose over like 3 or 4 months, and I was inpatient in Johns Hopkins. Essentially watching them decompose and making sure like the freezing hadn't spread anywhere else in my body, because we didn't really know what was going on. Like at first we're like, what is going on? Like, I mean, they did like skin, like biopsies and different things, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. Thanks to the Jewish community here, my parents' next door neighbor is a rheumatologist. Also, I should have said I had no established care here in Dallas because I'd never lived here with an illness, and I was home for Rosh Hashanah. So like, I didn't have anyone to go to who specializes in, rheumatological disorders. And so thank God my parents' neighbor, he is a rheumatologist at one of the hospitals here. And he said, I'm going to this convention. This #1 doctor in the world for this condition from Johns Hopkins is going to be there. I'm going to try to show him a picture of your hands, how they're like black and dead at the end, and see if he could get you in. And he showed him the picture, and this doctor said, I'll see her in 2 days. And it was right after Thanksgiving. And so I flew up to Johns Hopkins, and I was there for 3 months watching my fingertips essentially come off, trying to do like any pain blocking. At that point, it was a lot of pain, like taking care of the pain, because like the nerves at the end of your fingers. I mean, they tried doing like nerve blockers and different things like that, and like little surgeries, and nothing really helped. And I would say that was probably the biggest challenge I've been through in my life, because when you're in that amount of pain, there seems no reason to live. You're like, I should not be living if I'm in this amount of pain. So
medication wasn't working.
No.
Like any medication.
So that was the
like
thing. And then they even took me, exactly. So like, now it makes sense. So one doctor, and like, I'm so thankful for him, Dr. Fred Wigley, he came in one day and he said, we've got to get her off these pain meds. They're like, look at her. She's completely snowed out, and it's not even helping her because, these are dopamine blockers, the medications, and this is nerve pain. It's not even going to help the same path. So like at that point I actually remember like getting in a fight with the nurse being like, but I need my medication. And they just like took me off cold turkey, which in hindsight now I'm so blessed because, you see like all these opioid epidemic issue. But at the time that was literal torture. Like that was probably like the only, even if it like maybe wasn't like that physical relief, I'm sure in some sense it was, or like the only joy in my day of feeling like my head, I don't remember exactly what it was like, but it was like, okay, I really have nothing. And I was supposed to just wait for these fingertips to fall off naturally. And that was the longest 3-4 months of my life ever. Every second was like hours. It was, I really would never wish that on anyone. But fast forward to that, eventually I got them amputated, these 3 fingertips. And from that day, and I had like thought, okay, I'm giving up on taking this test. Like also my brain was like it's amazing how the brain can recover, because I couldn't even remember a 2-number sequence, let alone studying for this board exam of
Right.
positive reinforcement, contingencies, token economies, blah, 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 like all these different languages. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to take the test anymore. I'm going to have to figure something else out. I mean, I also had lost my ability to go to the bathroom myself, dress myself, take a shower, anything. And so I decided I would need to give up on the test. But from the day I got my fingertips amputated, they were open wounds that I had to change 4 times a day. It was like disgusting. Even when I saw it first, I fainted in the hospital. Like when I saw it after the surgery, I was just like, I completely fainted. And I decided I'm taking this test. So I would study every day for like 8 hours at a time. And I'm a very ADHD girl. I couldn't take any of my ADHD meds. So I'm like, there's no way I could pass this test. I literally can't focus on anything. And I decided I'm taking this test. So what I would do, I would sit with these huge bandages on my hands, because it's on both hands that were affected. And I would write out all my notes beautifully with pens and highlighters and stickers and everything. And I'd sit at one coffee shop here in Dallas, and I started posting them on Instagram, my notes, just for me to look at more, because I like seeing them all in one place. So I made a separate account, and it was called Study Notes ABA. And people started following it. And I would teach some things, because I just love teaching. And I felt like that had been ripped away from me with my lupus. And so I'd be like, I'm going to offer a free class on this topic, whatever it was. And then once I passed the test, I decided I'm going to start teaching these classes for free. So I did that, and the classes really grew. And then I started charging $5 a class. And I don't know, we maybe had 5 or 6 people in. And then one day it really grew when we had a student who had taken the test 10 times. She took our study prep, and on that time she passed. And she posted in a big Facebook group for ABA people. And suddenly we went from having 30 students signed up to having 120. Now we have about, we have thousands of students come through the program a year. And my entire story of the idea of, if I could do this, and I literally had my fingertips taken off right before, you could do it too. You just need to find your why. Why are you doing this? And what's your purpose? Is it because you're going to make going from making $17 an hour to making $80,000 a year for your family? Is it because you need to prove to your child that you don't give up? Is it because, there's no help for these kids in your community to get behavior analysis? What is your why? And we really focus on that. So that is really important for everyone to find. My why was, this was my last chance. This was I'm either going to have to, I found myself in a weird position, talking to my dad about okay, what do we have to support me for the rest of my life if I can't work and this and that? And I was I can't live for that. I've got to make it in this. And I don't have to, my why was, I'm doing this for myself to show that, granted all the things that I've lost so many physical ability to do things, or different things that I would have, even physicality wise, my skin issues drive me crazy, or the fact that I lost 3 fingertips, seemed I'm no one's going to want to eat at my house for Shabbat dinner. They're going to think there's a finger in the food. Every single thing, I went through everything. And you have to re-find yourself in terms of, what can I focus on that I still do have? What do I have? So for me, I never considered myself an academic. I still don't. I'm still not. I get really bored in 3 seconds. I would get 100% on a school project because I had like Christmas lights on it, not because like the content was that great. Nothing about me was academic, but it was, I had to figure out, what do I have that I still can do? And so honing in on those things, like, okay, my ability to be able to be creative, my ability to use my brain, my humor to teach this stuff. And my entire business was built on this. And it's so true to me. And it was built as an entire online platform to work for me, that I don't have to have the stress of like going to a physical job every day, which happened to be amazing. The fact that it was made for this and then Corona happened. But figuring out all the things I did have and then focusing on those to build something that I feel so strongly about. Like, I feel like I'm actually, I thought I wouldn't be able to help these individuals anymore with autism, or I feel like I'm helping on a larger scale now because I'm able to get behavior analysts out there who thought, you know, this test, I can't pass this test. I can't do this. And being able to share my story is also therapeutic for me, you know, and you see how much good is done by sharing your story. And it's all about the way you share your story. How are you going to tell your story to others, right? Because there are definitely things you could say that's going to make someone uncomfortable in terms of like, hey, so I have lupus, and a lot of people with lupus like end up in wheelchairs, and right. Like, I mean, at the time, my husband, Eliran, I met him with 10 fingers and I had a lot of health issues, and I tried, I mean, I think it's a blessing that he barely spoke English, because I tried telling him about my health issues and he's like, why are you telling me these? And I'm like, I have 7 fingers now. Now you understand? But it's all about the way you share your story with the world. Like, are you going to present it with confidence? Are you going to present it like, this is what I have? Like, someone who has diabetes, like, I have diabetes. I check my my sugar levels 3 times a day. That's just what I do. You could present it like that, or you could like, oh, so I have this disease. It's kind of scary. Like, I don't know what my prognosis is. And you create that belief that someone else believes. So you really have to believe it yourself.
Right. Basically, you own your story. It's like you define, going back to saying before, it could define you or you could define it. And just hearing what you're saying, like you own it. It's like, I heard a great line once, like, happiness is not an emotion, it's a choice. Like, you could choose to do it or you do not, like attitude, like it, right? It's the same, totally. You know, the pessimist and the optimist, they see the same thing and they're both right? They're seeing the same thing, but it's just how you look at it. Either it's good or it's bad. So they're not lying, right?
So it's like crazy how much I literally feel like God was planning out everything for me. Because if you like really saw the details of like everything in my business, each of it was some challenge I had along the way that brought me to where I am. Whether it's my brother, the fact that I'm in special ed, okay, that's one direction. Whether it's because I had to like write these notes out to try to remember because I had no attention span, not on my ADD meds, which I'd been on since 2nd grade, you know? One of the main premise of the video is writing these beautiful notes out, which like is what got us known for these beautiful notes and making studying reinforcing. I would have loved to be a Chelsea Handler and have my own comedy show. This is my opportunity. And, you know, my story of what I went through with my fingers, like it makes people want to be like, okay, if she could do this, I could do it. You know, like it's not that I'm some huge academic or I'm brilliant in these different things. It's like, it has to be taught to you in a way that you could bring it to life. And I feel like everything until now has led me to exactly, I mean, I'm sure I'm going to have more challenges along the way, you know, like it's not like a done thing. And sometimes I wonder, I'm like, you know, is it that I'm just more positive now that I see these things, or am I going through less, you know? And I think that positivity breeds more positivity, you know, like the way that you allow different things to affect you. So you were saying, like, were you always so out there? Honestly, when you see your life like in front of your eyes and it's like, okay, like, what do I have left? Like, I've had this taken away from me. I've had this taken away from me. You think like, well, I have to do like what I want to do. I have to make a difference. I need to like be authentic to myself. And that's exactly how I created what I have done. And I mean, I can't say that it's all for me. Honestly, a lot of it, like, I mean, and most of it is, you know, mazal from Hashem, because like how this has worked out. I mean, I couldn't imagine. And I mean, please God, this is just the beginning of where my company is going. But I mean, I just like, you know, when Yom Kippur just happened, I literally, when I was praying, I was just thinking, how crazy that there's this God sitting up there and who's like, no, this girl, like I think of 2016, literally my fingers came off a few months later after Rosh Hashanah. That's when it all started. He's like, haha, this girl's going to lose fingers this year. She doesn't know what she's in for, right? And I'm like, okay, then that happened. Then like this time in between, it's like, no, but I have a bigger plan for her. It's all going to be for a reason, and it's going to help her find her passion. And I just think of like, you know, getting credit for these different things I've done with the business or this and that. Like, I don't think it's necessarily me. I mean, I've done some things that are creative and it's allowed me to, but like, it's really from Hashem, the fact that I've been able to, you know, that this idea that I had has been accepted and loved by so many people. And there's a following and like a loyal audience. And we've been able to change so many lives. And so every single day, and this is one thing I want to say on here, is the importance of purpose. I did not plan on getting a job again. Like I told Eliran when I met him, I'm like, I cannot work. Like, you're going to have to figure out a way to support us. Like, I cannot work. My health is not good. Like, we need to have something set up, blah, blah, blah. And I would be sick a lot. I would need to sleep like 15 hours a day, literally. Once I had this and I like found such passion in every day and such a purpose to wake up, suddenly I didn't feel the pain on the end of my fingertips. Suddenly my joints didn't hurt. And I'm honestly amazed by this every day, that when you have a purpose and you have a reason to wake up and like something, it doesn't have to be a business, you know, it could be like a craft. I mean, mine started off as arts and crafts. So that's what I love doing. And that's what this business came to be. But like finding that is so important, you know, and just seeing things on a scale like that, because I could tell you, I have been on so many medications. I've been on so many treatments, and the first medication in 60 years for lupus or this or that or that. And I mean, my diagnosis list is much longer now with scleroderma, lupus, fibromyalgia, Raynaud's, blah, 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 blah. But like nothing has made me feel better than having a purpose. Like and I just think for people to really try find that. But then again, I can't say that I like just found it on my own. It was like, okay, I'm just going on a search. It kind of all came together.
Right. But you know what? On that point that you're saying, that you know that you're just saying that, something struck me before I was going to mention, and you said a line about when you were going through all the struggles. You said, "Let me find out like what I do have, right? What I do have," and it hits me. And I never thought of it in this particular way, but in Ethics of the Fathers, it says, "Ezehu Ashir, who is wealthy, hasameach bechalko, someone who is content with their portion, with their lot." So I was looked at it like almost like a financial, you have this much money, be happy, because if you want to make 100,000, you want to make 250, 305. You're always, if you're not happy with what you have, you're always going to want more. You're always going to want more. But right. You're providing a different perspective where you're saying, be happy with your lot in every aspect of your life, your physical condition, your surroundings, your friends, your parents, because everyone's going to have something different, and a family challenge, a health challenge, a financial challenge. And when you look to the next person and say, oh, they don't have that, or I wish I had this, or didn't have that, it's very hard for us to be happy. And God's saying, what's going to make you happy is being happy with what you have. But you need to really introspect, and it's not, like you said, it's not always easy to try to figure out when.
No, and it sounds much better in hindsight. You know, they say like, right. Don't they say like, that one quote, like Hashem was like making a rug backwards or something? You could only see that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Like
that was
only-
the second thing I was gonna say. That's your dad's
okay.
famous line, because that's your dad's line. He loves to
Is
talk
it?
about that. You could say, go for it. It's like
I don't know it though,
tapestry.
but I know like a tapestry. Like from the back, it looks like a huge mess and like knots and all this stuff. But when you see the other side of the tapestry, it's this beautiful portrait that was all made with, certain, like everything was for a reason. And I mean, when you're going through it, and the one thing I do not want to sound like on here is that person just preaching like, yeah, no, it's all beautiful. Like it sucks when you're going through it. It sucks.
You don't always get to see the good.
Life
Yeah,
sucks. Like,
right away.
I was so depressed. I couldn't write my own list of the reasons I should die. I had to have my mom write it for me. Like my hands didn't work. My poor mother, she's so sweet. Bless her. So like, I mean, so I don't want to tell anyone along the way, like it's easy, but what I do see, what is crazy is that like, sometimes I look at my situation now and you know what? To me, I think it's like amazing. Like I wake up every day and I'm like, oh my gosh, like how cool is this that I have this business as my passion. I wake up, I love to do it. Like I could be the one giving tzedakah. I could be the one doing this. Like that's exactly what I want to do. But someone else, it might not be that amazing. But
no, it's a whole your appreciation on everything.
Yes.
Sorry, cut you off. You're appreciating
No.
like you said, like we don't ask for challenges when we have them. Like it's painful, it's hard. But there is a certain element that I guess the silver lining is that's like you appreciate. Yep, like you said, the purpose is real, and that's real happiness. We all know happiness. Money's good, having nice houses, the cars, but at the end of the day, you always want more. You're never satisfied. It's part of the nature that God put inside us. So, but when you have purpose, that's the ultimate validation, right? That's when I feel validated. I'm living for something. And sometimes when you go through the challenge, that whatever challenge you're going through, it's only then do you flex that muscle. Now you could appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like
right.
It's like we live in such a culture. We live in the when-then culture. When I have this, and then I'll be good. When I have the spouse, the money, the job, then. But like we fail to really appreciate it because like we're just always looking for the next moment. But only when you have that that appreciation. And many times, unfortunately, it comes through the struggle, or maybe fortunately, it comes through the struggle. Then it's a whole different life.
Yeah, I mean, I always will tell, my friends or something, and I'm like, when I feel good, for example, which thank God most days it is that I feel good now. But like when I feel really good, like I don't know, in general, even when I wake up healthy, like I genuinely in the morning, like when I say Modani, I genuinely like it's not just saying like the the Hebrew words of it. I'm genuinely like Hashem. Like instead of just going through all the brachos, I'm like, thank you so much that I could walk today. Thank you that my joints are working and I could like use my hand. Thank you so much that my brain's working. Because when you have these things switched off for a second, you realize everything that is working in that moment. So like when I feel good, sometimes I'm like, am I manic? How happy I am? Like I literally be driving and like the smile on my face is like creepy. And I'm like, this is weird. But it's this idea of just genuinely being able to appreciate these things. And it takes time to get there. And I do think a huge thing that a lot of us struggle with, myself included, for a long time. Like I have other struggles now. I don't feel like this is my current struggle, but always like seeking it. Like, well, what is happiness? Like, when am I going to be happy? Like a huge question of like, okay, so when I do this, will I be happy? If I take this course, will I be happy? If I do this? And I think kind of just realizing that like, look, my situation as someone else wouldn't necessarily be happy. The fact that I have to like wear gloves when it's 110 degrees outside, I can't be in the sun, I can't be in the cold, I can't do this. But to me, I really do feel happy each day that I feel good. So it's just this idea of realizing that like it's the whole process, and that there's not like a certain place you go and it's like, anyways, the idea that there's not a certain place that you go and now you've picked up happiness, it's the process along the way. And I think getting there, a huge thing is gratitude and thanking God for the things that you do have and just acknowledging that in your everyday life. And I think that's huge, really huge.
I mean, you're saying that is that, fortunately, you had that connection through your family and through your upbringing to realize how God plays a factor and all that. And I think in Judaism in general, and that's the fact that God, people that give us the Torah, the Bible, and all these seemingly a lot of rules and this and that, and it seems so restrictive. But the reality is, and it's a whole nother discussion for a different day, but God made it that there's meaning in every single aspect of one's life. Like if you really get into the nitty gritty, it's, you make a blessing on food before you eat it. Now you just took a mundane thing. It seems just to be like, I'm eating. Now I'm blessing God for this food. And it's like, now I just made this meaningful. Wow. Just, using the restroom, there's a prayer for afterwards, thanking God for. People don't think about that, but when you read the prayer and it's like, and you get into
the
it.
Prayer is putting those things in, but when you have a health issue and you can't go to the bathroom, or you can't do that,
right?
Like even talking basic human behavior, like now you will say that prayer. I mean, so I think a lot of these prayers, like really, when you go through something, they begin to have personal meaning to you, because like it's like telling someone to imagine like like a fourth dimension or something. Like we just can't until you've been through something and that pain, or what it is, or what it's like not to have that, to be able to dress yourself. Like, I work with a lot of individuals who can't speak. And I had an issue with my voice this year, that my voice wouldn't come out. And I was like freaking out. I'm like, oh no, is this a new thing that I don't have a voice now? Just that I talk too much. But
they said when you yell a lot, you're going to lose your voice.
Exactly.
The doctor said.
Exactly. So, but just this idea of, you kind of come into contact with these things, and it's these difficulties we go through are blessings in a sense, because now you really get to appreciate it when you do have it.
If there's one thing you could tell yourself 15 years ago, what would that one thing be? I know there'd be a lot of things, but there's one thing that you could.
Oh, good one.
Probably, this is deep.
Oh,
Something deep. Probably along the lines, I think about this a bit. I'm like, if we truly trusted in Hashem, everyone talks about this like Emunah and whatever.
Faith
if we
in God,
truly, if we knew exactly what was going to happen, that's what it would be like. It'd be like, don't worry, it's all going to work out for your best. You're going to do well. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. It would be like telling myself, like, no, like just actually trust God, that like there's a plan behind it. Like it's easy to say now that it's over, but it would need to be a message kind of like, hey, Liat, it's me, your future self. I promise you're going to be really happy. Just like it's a few rough years, and like the fingers maybe take care of themselves. The heartbreak that you've gone through in relationships will be fine. Just like, I could have saved a few tears. So
that's good. I was going through something hard. I was going through something challenging, and someone once gave me advice, like, don't get in God's way. Like, let him do it. Like, just do your thing, work on what you got to work. Just don't get in his way. So it's like, that's
like so said, true.
Like, it's okay. He has a plan. Things are going to be good. And we see it time over and over.
I think that people need to believe it, because if someone told me that my life would be where it is now from where I was like 3 years ago, like the queen of every Tehillim list, which like there's still our list, which is amazing. I'd be like, yeah, right. But like, and there's sometimes situations where you see someone, and I don't want to like, and sometimes I'm like, I understand why they're depressed. Like that sucks what they're going through, or they've lost so much. Like, I don't blame them for feeling this way, or like feeling like their life isn't worth living, or this and that. And then I'm like, whoa, Liat. I mean, I'm also like a major empath. I'm like, Liat, do you not think people said that about you 4 years ago? Like the poor girl's fingers are falling off in front of her. She has nothing left. Like she has to live at her parents' house in like the back converted garage, And so it's just like this idea of like, even when you think you are in the lowest point, like Hashem still has the power to make that change. And I think that's just really important to remember.
Nice.
Absolutely. Wow. I know, Liat, I feel like we could talk for another 8.5 hours easy. But maybe we'll call this part 1 for a future podcast. But
right. Next time we'll have the technical difficulties will be at a minimum.
That's okay. We're used to it. We're always in
technical difficulties. Well, thank you so much. It's really been eye-opening and also very inspirational to see how you took life's challenges and have turned it around and become successful in your business, and you're married, and we love Eliran as well, and it's pretty amazing.
You can have
so,
him on a podcast too.
I don't love him that much.
Yeah, he'd be entertaining.
Yeah,
He'll
for
talk to
sure.
you about the life, enjoying the life.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, just to hear him talk, it'd be worth it to have him on there. I love it.
But thank you guys so much. This is awesome.
Yeah. All right, Liat. Thanks so much.
Thanks
All
for
right,
joining.
guys.
Thanks everyone for joining us on another episode of Hanging at the Hub.
Subscribe to Hanging at the Hub on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us at jet.jewisheducationtexas on Instagram and at Jewish Education Texas on Facebook. Or watch the show at jetexas.org.